Hello, class. This is Marcos, and I'm doing a follow-up video from our week 3 sessions 1 and 2 on Tuesdays and Thursdays of this week. And just wanted to give you a quick refresher on what we talked about as you're now going from your initial research and strategy development for your brand that you're going to redo, and want to give you an example of how you can move forward to create a set of concepts that will be the foundation for your rebrand. So I'm going to just remind you of some of the things that we're doing. Just a quick reminder that the Motion lecture series is this week's cross cohort topics lecture series. So you should be watching those 2 videos, and then there's an assignment for the week. That's a Miro board posting. So just be sure you go to, I think I have it here. You go to the Canvas and get that assignment. I guess I don't have it. Never mind. Okay, so let's go into what we're doing here. Just a reminder that what we're going to do is we're going to create an addition to your current strategy deck. The idea is that we're going to build up on this deck piece by piece so that you have a full presentation by the end of the assignment. When we present, we're going to kind of skip through that part. So if you do focus on just making these new pieces, obviously, but attaching it to that so that there's a full context, particularly when we're presenting, and maybe it'll be like, who's the competition again? And you can quickly scroll back there and find it. But when we review things, we're going to kind of focus on these concepts, since everybody in the class was present on Thursday to get a sense of what it is that your brand is about and what you're thinking on your strategy is. So as this slide shows here, this shows the addition of 3 concepts, and each concept is supported by 3 parts. One is a concept statement, and that's a statement that tells the story of what your concept is about, brings on maybe a metaphor or some kind of way to express the idea of how you want to rebrand the company or organization you're working on, and in words, and not in designy words, but kind of in words that help explain the overall idea in a more not abstract, but in a more kind of storytelling way that allows for a non-design person to understand. It doesn't get into tactics or how you're going to do it, or criticisms on typography or color. It just talks about the overall narrative of what you want to do, and it might include, it'll be connected obviously to your overall strategy, but it'll be how will you fulfill the strategy through this concept. And then you'll have, for each concept, you'll have that statement, and for each concept, you'll support it with a design with inspiration and concept boards. So the first is the design concept board, which tells the story in a visual way with photography that you find, that you curate together, that you put together in a way that gives the look and feel of what you want to do, what you want to accomplish. It doesn't necessarily have graphic design techniques that you're trying to show, but it does kind of give a sense of the feeling of the brand and where it's going to go with this new direction. And then to get more tactical, we'll do the third component to each concept, which will be the new design inspiration that's connected to your concept. So each one of your concepts, as you see here on the 3rd slide, will have a board that that brings upon these different ways that the concept of simple can be executed in whether it's deconstructing type, or whether it's the way that you use dimension, or just kind of overall tactically find ways to express your concept in general. You can see here on the 3rd one, it gets very specific about how to minimize typography in a way that will help support this compact idea, or the sleek idea. Kind of touches on the idea of like interconnecting typefaces and how that could become a tool for how to express the concept. And then all this is not going to lead yet to the design. It could inspire you to do that. You might want to start developing it, but for this first stage, let's keep that still. Let's withhold the design still. That's the next week's assignment. But for this, we're going to stop at these mood boards so that we can have a conversation about it before you really get into it. And then just to review one more time, you're going to build a presentation. You're going to have 2 or 3 concepts. I show 3 here, but it can be 2 if you're feeling like that's the best way to approach your rebranding. And if you're also thinking there's plenty of time that you can commit to the 2 concepts versus the 3. Sometimes when it's 2 or 3, it could be that they're very subtly different, and that's okay. And when you think of these concepts too, I want you to think about them in an evolution to revolution sort of way. In other words, your first concept should probably be the one that's the closest in, the one that connects to the current brand the most and brings the idea of where they've been and who they are and just subtly changes it. And then as you go towards concept 2 and 3, get more aggressive or push further away from where they're at so that you end up with ideas that become new and that become revolutionary towards what they're not expecting. And if you do it in that order from closest to furthest, then you help guide them towards new thinking. So I think that's important in terms of the order of your concepts, and you may need to change the order once you develop the design. And I'm going to show you the example that the student did exactly that. They flipped around the order in order to keep the idea of evolutionary to revolutionary intact. All right, so I think that basically covers it. And now let me share with you an example of what I'm looking for. Let's see here. So this is a brand, and this is I'm going to show you 2 parts of the assignment. First, I'm going to show you literally what you're doing this week and end it on that. And then I'm going to go to another version of this deck, which shows the full assignment. And just make sure you obviously keep those separated but I want to see so you can see the result of what the research led to and what the design concepts, how they developed into actual ideas. But for now, this is actually the part 2 assignment that the student did last year for Spotify. And like you've already done and we've already reviewed, there's this first section, which represents the research strategy deck, which has the history, talks about the current strategy, relays the idea of who the target market is, talks about competitors and showcases who those are and how they're distinct to the brand that you're working on, and then dives into what the current personality of the brand is and how that successfully or unsuccessfully connects to what their strategy is, and showcases it in a kind of a visual way that does a little bit of an inventory of where they're at visually and what the brand is saying in its personality through its visual assets. And then this is ending as you ended in this portion with the new strategy. And for this student, it was about taking Spotify, which is, I think 2004, 2008. It's actually not that new of a company, and kind of developed towards younger people, millennials at the time when they were younger, and focused on them, and kind of had this, how did she put it? Kind of an electric vibe to it, I think is what she said. That was based on sort of web savvy mindset that brought in the music world into a phone application experience, or overall was designed to put the idea of this being on a phone as a new and novel thing. And now as the years have gone by, it's not so new and novel, it's just more typical. So trying to find ways to move from that and to evolve into the next level, and to expand its audience to be all ages now that not just the younger demographic is savvy with and willing to use Spotify as a way to listen to music. Now it's become much more pervasive, and for a lot more of a broader age range from younger to older, and wanting to bring more of a inclusivity towards different kinds of music, and then create more of a community that will allow people with different sort of music tastes or backgrounds to share in that. So to kind of bring more of a space of interaction for this brand. And also just looking at looking at the brand, which is nicely put here in the bottom of every page, it also kind of wanting to create more of a distinction that it's a music brand, and where now it is sort of saying sun, but it looks a little bit like your internet connection, and more about the technology. So that was the overall summary of the new personality, and then showcasing it here in terms of the age ranges varying, and the sharing of different kinds of music tastes, and involving the look and feel towards connecting to that, and not having it be so novel that it's on a phone. Okay, so that represents where you guys were at on Thursday, and now this is showing what you're doing, an example of what you'll be doing for this next week, in this concept portion of your deck. So here, the student simply repeats the new strategy, the same page as it was up here. Maybe there's changes based on the conversation that was had in the class session. So if you had a strategy that you posted and then you wanted to update it and revise it to broaden it or to limit things, then do that of course here. But this is a way to get the review started so that we're reminded of where we're at. And now we go into the first concept and a concept statement, and not just a concept statement, but a concept name. And this designer called this playful vintage. That's sort of a way to set the tone. And using two words like this is kind of a good way, because there's two, it gives you a chance to kind of say a little bit more than maybe what one word can do. But having a name like that is helpful in terms of when you're presenting to clients and when you're talking to the people that have commissioned you to do this work. It gives these non-visual people like a name or something that they can hold on to and talk about it in that context. They can say like, I really like our playful vintage rebranding is the right way, or I don't like this, or it gives it a persona in a way. So here she writes, Spotify will expand its audience by changing its look completely by going for a more vintage and playful aesthetic. This can also attract more audiences as vintage has been trendy, but also adding a playful side to it will suit Spotify better to depict that it's a music brand. This concept will minimize the electric vibe to tone it down. Electric vibe being the way they look now, the way they were looking at this at the time of this rebranding effort, to tone it down a bit and more soft and approachable. So trying to take away the techie side, but and then bring in a more approachable look. So this statement's a little bit, I want everyone to do their best in writing here, and it's a little choppy, but I think that if the focus could be a little more towards a bigger idea in the beginning of it, to say that, to explain kind of the idea of playful vintage and how the brand wants to build itself around the idea of being more accessible and having more depth in terms of the kinds of legacies it points to. It's not just such a new thing that it's stripped down and basic and bare and doesn't have any depth to it. So playful vintage is a way to bring more depth, earned depth to the brand, and to use that earned depth to connect more people towards their music taste specifically, and then to be able to be more inclusive in terms of who's on the platform, and have it become more of a sharing platform where people can share music together. So with that comes the idea of putting together a kind of this new concept mood board that showcases the feel of it. This is a little maybe I don't know, too kind of stock photo-y, but it doesn't include like graphic treatments or graphic strategies, which it shouldn't do. But on the second one, which is the design inspiration, that's when you do that. So I think this is obviously a lot more informative towards building a new design. And basically it points to a lot of things. It points to like color treatments. It points to typography direction. It points to the sort of techniques of like layered and photography and vector drawings and the layering of that and the use of black and white and color. And there's just like a lot of things to kind of point to here, and a lot of things to, as a designer, to be able to then think about and and see what could work in terms of bringing this feel into the new logo design. And then concept 2 is what this student is calling electric and hip. Spotify will expand its fun, electric, and surprising personality to a more compelling and diverse atmosphere, which will allow Spotify to attract more audiences, because the personality gives the opportunity for the audience to feel some emotion, just like music does, whether to cry, be happy, sad, excited. Spotify wants to capture how music makes you feel. So this is kind of bringing the brand more towards the idea of connecting it to the story of what music does to people. And also it's connecting it more towards what this designer felt that Spotify has been trying to do or has been doing for the past 10 plus years, 15 years. And as I was saying before, this ended up becoming concept 1 in her final deck, because it actually, what this concept is saying is that we'll kind of do what you were saying, but we're going to upgrade it in a more modern way, in a deeper way. So in the next deck I show you, this is going to become concept 1 when she presented it as a final piece to a panel of reviewers. But what does it look like? This, I think, is a better job of doing this mood board to show the design concept mood board in photography, showcasing this idea of electric hip in various photos, and then going towards the design inspiration mood board that utilizes how typography, colors, photography can come together in this idea of how the brand can look. And again, as we talked about in class, remember that these mood boards don't necessarily, in your approach overall to the redesign, doesn't have to just necessarily apply to the mark, to the logo itself. It's not that that's the only thing you're doing. We are working on the logo as the first step, but you're also creating a full branding palette through the application of all the ways visuals are used in all the different mediums within and the touch points that your brand has to offer. So when making these mood boards, don't just think what are the techniques you're going to use to change the logo, but how will you treat photography, illustration type overall, and the way that the brand presents itself. All right, so that represents what you're doing. So this person did 2 options, and I kind of stuck to that. So next, I want to show you what that same idea looks like weeks afterwards, after the full project was done, just to see how those mood boards and how those concepts led to finished designs. So I'm going to rip through here and show you that, remember, it's the same thing. So in the end, the first week of the project ended up being the first part of the presentation. And then here we go to the second part, which is what we just reviewed. But now we're going to add, and we put electric hip first. Like I said, we changed that to be the first concept because it was the closest idea. And so here we go from this mood board, which I think had been added to, right? I don't think these things were in here. And I think this became an inspiration following that first review of the mood boards. And then it was applied to the way that Spotify can look as a logo. So here we go from a written concept to a design concept mood board and a design inspiration mood board, and then ends up with what the logo could look like, so that everything kind of comes together and makes sense to the person you're presenting to. And then the same thing with electric hip. Oh, nope, sorry, electric hip is still being shown now in touch points. And again, this is not what you're doing this week. We're not designing the logo, we're not designing these touch points, but I'm just showing you the full presentation so you could see how it ended up coming together. Now concept 2, this is what you're doing this week, putting together these 3 pages for a concept. Here you can see that there was more of this kind of black letter idea brought into the mix, and then it ended up becoming kind of a big part of what the final result was in the logo. And you can kind of get a good sense of like that all these came together. Even the fact that this is kind of a sort of fairy tale-ish kind of matches this sort of Shrek-y look that the logo ended up having. I don't think Shrek-y look is what she was after, but that's the best way I could think of expressing that. But then here you see what it looks like applied in touch points within the brand and even outside of its world as an app, as an ad campaign. And if you're doing something that is kind of limiting as a piece of technology, you can think of it as coming into the real world in different ways through ad campaign or through a brick and mortar application. So here's what it looks like overall. And then the 2 options with, again, the little before current logo at the bottom. Okay, so now this last part here is just showing that her decision was that this was the best choice and that she wanted to show this sort of as the winning design, and then what it would look like as an expanded set of touch points that went even deeper than the initial ones did. So here she just applied it even more. She did a really nice job of kind of creating this sort of ability to blend into whatever whatever the graphic it was associated with, kind of take a second row kind of hierarchy, and then how it works more directly on the app or as an Instagram post or whatever else these are. Looking at, like, you know, outside of the world of the phone, like business papers or business cards, and more kind of on the scene ad campaigns that have a digital connection to them, and merch, and talking about like events that could be associated with what Spotify does, and even looking at what their corporate offices could look like, even here in detail, like what the new look would look like within their workspace. Whoa, and they got a big fancy new building. And then we'll talk about this later, but to bring the whole story together in one page as an ender. And then, of course, never forget the thank you page. So that pretty much showcases what these design concepts are meant to lead to. They're meant to lead to as a way, it's a two-part way. One, for you to be able to actually build your path towards your solution, to be able to get the tools you need, get the understanding you need with the strategy, and how that strategy is going to be told through the words of the concept and through the look and feel you want to achieve, and then through these tools that you can kind of use to mine and to become a final look and feel. So for this week, let's just get the concept statement, the concept mood board, and the design inspiration mood board for 2 to 3 directions, so that we can share with them. We can share them on Thursday as a full class, and on Tuesday we'll have reviews that in small groups, which I'll send a email and Slack out to everybody to assign how that works, with the option of coming to class, as I'll be in class on Tuesday, but you can opt to meet online if you wish. Okay, let me know if you have any questions. Reach out to me by email or Slack. And on Tuesday, we'll be reviewing this, but it should be like, obviously it can be done if you want it to be done, but don't feel like it has to be done so that you have that extra day to then finish it. But basically it'll be a chance for you to get feedback and to be able to adjust it so that you have a strong, well put together result for our full class meeting on Thursday. All right, everybody. I look forward to seeing you, and have a great weekend.